want to talk to you today about miracles. How many of you ever experienced what you believe was a miracle? How many of you experienced miracles and probably aren't even aware? Those who didn't raise your hand. Miracles happen every single moment of every single day. A minister was pulled over for speeding. And when the officer came up to his window, he said, rolled down the window, he said, "Sir, you realize you were going 20 miles over the speed limit?" "Yes, I do." "I'm sorry." He says, "Sir, do I smell alcohol on your breath?" And he looks down and he sees this empty wine bottle. He says, "Have you been drinking?" He says, "No, I've been drinking water. Just drinking water." So the minister looks down at the bottle and he goes, "Lord have mercy, he's done it again." So I want to talk to you about doing it again. The miracles that happen every day. The word miracle comes from the Latin word miraculum, which means wonder. Miracles happen and wonders never cease. In the Gospels, Jesus performed approximately 36 miracles. He was 30 years old by the time he entered his ministry. And up until then, he was pretty obscure. He was born a miracle according to Scripture. And then when he was about 12, his parents were looking all over the marketplace for him, and he just sort of disappeared. And they found him sitting with the elders and talking with them about truth, way above his chronological years. So we know the stories of Jesus are stories about miracles, but we also know that Jesus performed some miracles. Well, in the book of John, the 14th chapter, the 12th verse, we read about, "They who believe in me, the works that I do, they will do also, and even greater works." And that's about miracles. You have the power to perform miracles every day, and you do, without even knowing it. Sophia told us in our Bible class that she would often have people do this. So I'm borrowing this from Sophia. So everybody just do this. Right? Do you know that's a miracle? That's a miracle that we can do that. Not every animal can do that. So everything we do, every breath we take is a miracle, and we don't even think about it. So as one philosopher said, we act as if everything is a miracle, or we act as if nothing is a miracle, right? And that's what Einstein said. There is only one way to live your life, as if everything is a miracle or nothing is a miracle. But either way, whether we recognize it or not, we're experiencing miracles every day. The definition of miracle in the dictionary is a surprising, welcome event not explicable by natural or scientific laws. They're considered a work of a divine agency, a wonder. Charles Fillmore, co-founder of Unity, defines miracle in the revealing word as events that take place as a result of operation of a higher unknown law. Now, you know things that happen you can't explain. You don't know how that happened, but it happened. So I'm going to talk to you about some of those unexpected miracles and some of the expected miracles this morning. You heard Duke announce about Dr. Sonia Willis, our congregant for some 20 years here, who was a catalyst for starting Courageous Conversations. She's an educator, and has been for a lot of years, and the daughter of a very well-known educator who's having a school named after her in Kansas City, Kansas, the Gloria Willis Elementary School. Well, Sonia didn't have a good relationship with her mom. They were kind of distant, mainly because of Sonia's lifestyle, and Sonia's an only child. So her mother, like all of us, we have these dreams and these ideals that we want our children to live up to. And when they don't live up to our expectations, we take it personally. We feel a sense of letdown. So all of her life, Sonia felt she was a letdown to her mother. And then when her mother was diagnosed with a terminal illness, Sonia had to make a decision. She had to decide to be vulnerable, to allow herself to take whatever hits her mother gave her, whatever insults, whatever distrust, but to still be there to be her daughter, to help her through the dying process. And in that process, she kept a journal of their experiences together. And what's miraculous about this, when Sonia asked me to read her manuscript and to write an introduction, what's so miraculous is the healing that I personally witnessed take place on my visits with her and her mother in the hospital and in the care facility, and our constant discussions. And one day she was sitting over here at the back, and she ran, after service, ran and grabbed David Adams, who's a chaplain, and just cried in his arms, because she was really struggling with, how can I show my mother love, who never even told me she loved me and was always super critical? And why are we as parents super critical? Because we want our children to be better than us, and we don't know how to express that. Parents can only teach what they know. But here was this educator, this well-known woman, who educated and nurtured a lot of children for over 50 years in the Kansas City, Kansas School District. But her daughter felt needy, longing for that. And while her mother was dying, as people would come in, former co-workers, she served on the Board of Education up to her death, all these people, the minister, they would tell Sonia how much her mother bragged about her and how much she loved her. But she never told Sonia that herself until near the end, when she realized that she needed to tell Sonia before she left this world that I do love you. And that it's a powerful story. I witnessed a miracle. I witnessed a miracle as these two people grew together in the final weeks of Gloria's life. I witnessed a miracle when, for the first time in her life, Sonia saw her mother's eyes light up when she walked into the room and wasn't super critical of what she was wearing that day or why she keeps her hair so short. So if you stay this afternoon for the book signing, you'll witness a miracle. When I was teaching Sunday school, we used to sing this little song that we taught the kids. And I think it's a song that's so simple that you should remember, whenever you're feeling like nothing's going right in your life, expect a miracle, because it's going to happen. All you need to do is awaken to it. The miracle's happening right there in front of you. Just awaken to it. The song is, miracles are happening, yes, miracles are happening, yes, miracles are happening to me. My mind is now open, my heart is receptive, and miracles are happening to me. Okay, come on. Miracles are happening, yes, miracles are happening, yes, miracles are happening to me. My mind is now open, my heart is receptive, and miracles are happening to me. Now when you do, that's easy to remember. So whenever you're thinking nothing's going right, I'm in traffic and everybody's, is bumper to bumper, just know there's a miracle up ahead. There's a miracle up ahead. Yesterday, we experienced the 50th anniversary of a miracle. Do you remember what happened 50 years ago? If you were around. Now, 50 years ago for me is in May, I graduated from high school, so we had our 50th year reunion this weekend. So if my eyes look a little cloudy, it's because we were up a little bit later than I expected, partying with all my senior citizen classmates. I'm not a senior citizen, they are. So that was a miracle too. That of the 268 students who Carol Bradstreet taught most of the time, she was one of our teachers, the 268 students, at least 200 of us are still around. And I guess there were probably about 100 or so at the dinner last night. That's a miracle. To see people that you grew up with from kindergarten to high school, and now you've got children and grandchildren, some of them have great-grandchildren, and you're able to sit down and talk about old times and relive those good experiences, and you're still friends, that's a miracle. So we witness miracles every day. Well, the 36 miracles that Jesus performed, one of them that I want to talk about today is a wedding at Cana. Anybody ever heard of the wedding at Cana? Yeah. It's in John, the 2nd chapter, the 1st through the 11th verse. The gospel tells us that there was a wedding and there was a feast, and they were out of wine. Now, I don't know how many weddings you've been to, but being out of wine may not make the party go so well, right? So they're out of wine, and Jesus' mother says to him, you need to get some wine. He goes, woman, it's not my time. In other words, why are you telling me to perform this small miracle? Now, that might not have been what Jesus meant, but that's my interpretation. Why do you want me to do a magic trick when I can do greater works? That's my words. But that was his mother. And you know, when mama tells you to do something, you do it. But his mother was very shrewd. She was very intuitive. So she didn't just tell him to do it. She told the disciples to do what he tells you to do. In other words, she put him on the spot, right? And she knew the miracle was coming. She just had to get them to open their minds to it. And so Jesus tells the servants to go bring these big jugs, like 20-gallon jugs, and to fill them with water, and to bring them. And then they take the first draw and they fill it up and take it to the king. And he tastes it and he says, wow, you know, this is a $100 bottle of wine, right? And he says, okay, we'll serve all of this, and then when people have too much to drink, you take the cheap wine. He has no idea that that was water, and there was a miracle that had happened that turned that water into wine. Do you know you have the power to do that? Now, I don't suggest you go home and pull some water out of the tap and fill a jar or a jug and expect it to turn to wine. But you have the power to perform miracles, because it says, these things I do also you may do, and even greater works. You have the power to perform miracles every day, and you do, without even knowing it. How about that time when you were trying to find a parking space, and there wasn't one, and then all of a sudden, there's a parking space right in the spot that you wanted to get to park, right? Now, we might not think of that as a miracle. Just somebody moved, right? But look around you. There are miracles happening. Miracle's also, by the way, a popular girl's name now, according to the U.S. Social Security Administration. I happen to know a little girl by the name of Miracle. I think that's wonderful. I went back to the moon. I forgot to mention that what I was talking about with the 50th anniversary of the moon landing, when Buzz Aldrin stepped out, guess what he had? He had a copy of the prayer for protection that we recite every Sunday after service, that James Dillard Freeman, poet emeritus of Unity, wrote for the soldiers in World War II. He had a copy of that. And he placed it in a time capsule on the moon. That was a miracle. That was a miracle. One small step for man, one giant leap for mankind is a miracle of biblical proportions. And placing that prayer there is a miracle too. I want to talk to you about a couple of miracles that I read about this week. I love inspiring true stories. And I subscribe to John O'Leary's podcast. He lives in St. Louis. I've mentioned him before. John O'Leary was burned over 90% of his body as a 9-year-old playing with the gasoline can and matches in his garage. His brother, who antagonized him all the time, was 17 years old, and he was babysitting that day while the parents and his older sister were out. John came running through the house, flaming, just flames all around him. And his brother, who he thought hated him because he would make him peanut butter and hot sauce sandwiches for lunch, actually pulled up a rug in the foyer and wrapped John in it, took him outside. It was January, it was freezing cold. John said he was expected to die, but miracles upon miracles happened in his life. I met John personally a few years ago, and I'm just wanting him to come here and speak to all of us. His website is called Live Inspired. Live Inspired. And he makes it his business every single week to bring a podcast to us that inspires us. So 2 weeks ago, the podcast was Kevin Hines. I don't know if any of you have ever heard that name. Kevin Hines. Kevin Hines was suffering from bipolar disorder and was about to give up on life. It was 2000, September. Kevin lived in California. He took a bus trip to San Francisco with the intention of jumping off the Golden Gate Bridge. He said to himself that if somebody, anybody, would look at me and say, "Are you okay?" that would give him confirmation that he needed to be alive, that he needed to stay here. But nobody did. He was on that bus crying his eyes out. And the only person who spoke to him actually didn't speak to him, but said to the bus driver, "Hey, what's with that kid?" Eventually, the bus driver made him get off the bus. He paced back and forth along that suspension bridge, trying to decide what to do, and finally he climbed up as high as he could and took the leap to 220 feet. When he first leaped off the bridge, the thought came to him, "I don't want to do this. God save me." But it was too late. He plunged into that frigid water. He guessed he might have gone down about 70-some feet trying to paddle his way back up, but it was too strong. Suddenly he felt something slippery, and he thought it was a shark. It was going to kill him. But this thing just kept circling him, and he grabbed a hold. And then pretty soon he heard voices. He saw a light. A woman who saw him jump off the bridge had called 911, and the Coast Guard came. He was saved, and he decided to spend the rest of his life dedicated to helping people to prevent suicide. He's an activist. Look him up. 17,000 people have jumped off the Golden Gate Bridge. 17,000. 1,700. More than 1,700, I have that wrong. 25 known survivors out of 1,700. The Coast Guard told Kevin when he came to, when he was better, and they saw him in the hospital, that he was one of 57 bodies they had pulled out of the San Francisco Bay in recent times, and he was the only live body of that 57. Suicide is the 10th leading cause of death for all ages in the United States, and we know that suicide among veterans is continuously rising. It's the second leading cause of death for ages 10 to 24 and college students 18 or 12 to 18. There is one death by suicide in this country every 12 minutes. That means from the time of the start of this service until it's over, there will be at least 5 suicides in this country. The leading cause is depression. And only half of Americans seek treatment or have access to treatment for depression. 80 to 90% of those who do seek treatment are successful in their treatment. But get this, 44,965 Americans each year take their lives. And we can do something about it. We can do something about it. One thing we can do is learn more about it and how we can help. And there are all kinds of programs that we can tap into. We can take people more seriously when they threaten, when they say that they may take their lives. The statistics show that most people who say that intend to. And sometimes we don't take it seriously. Now that's one story about a miracle. Because Kevin being rescued and living to tell about it is no small miracle. But you know, when he jumped off and he said, "I don't want to do this, God save me," he was expecting a miracle. Another story this week that John O'Leary posted that I love, and when he does these individuals actually are telling their story, so it's actually them talking. John Adams, he was 14 years old on January 19, 2014, when he and 2 buddies were playing on the ice at Lake St. Louis in St. Charles, Missouri. They said they were practicing for the Olympics. The ice wasn't as thick as they thought it was, and all 3 of them fell through. His 2 buddies, one was able to swim to safety. The other one was rescued by the emergency crews. But by then, John was down under the water. There was a rescuer, a first responder, who swam out without a rope, which is against the rules, to rescue this young man. And when he got there, he couldn't find him. He was under for a few minutes and up, and he's fishing around, and he can't feel him, he can't see him. He's nowhere to be found. And a voice says, "Move a little bit to your right." Now, he thought it was his captain, but later on he found out that his captain didn't tell him that because the captain was too far away to even see where he should go. But this voice, expect a miracle, was nothing short of a miracle. He was able to rescue this young man who had been underwater 15 minutes, suffering hypothermia and not breathing. And when they got him to the hospital, he had not been breathing for an hour. And so they called his mother. But they didn't tell her, they just said he fell through the ice. They didn't tell her that he was dead. So she gets to the hospital and she sees all these tubes and he's on a breathing machine, and she says, "Holy Spirit, please don't take my son." Now, she and her husband had adopted him when he was 5 months old from Mexico, Guatemala. "Don't take my son." And the minute she said that prayer, the nurses and the doctors were shocked at what they saw. Every machine lit up. You see, when she said that prayer, she didn't say it half-heartedly. She expected a miracle. Now, that miracle didn't happen to me when I watched the paramedics try to revive my 2-year-old son. That didn't happen. When they got his body to the hospital on the base, I expected a miracle. Any minute, they're going to come out and say, "He's fine." But they didn't. They came out and they said, "We're sorry. We couldn't save him." And I was devastated. For a long time, I couldn't read the Daily Word or listen to anything positive or nothing. It was just dead silence for me. It's like the whole world had stopped. And then one day, I read a scripture that led me to expect a miracle. And the scripture is in the book of Joel, the 2nd chapter, the 25th verse. "I will restore to you the years that the locusts have eaten." And I clung to that, expecting a miracle. Oh, I didn't expect my son to be brought back to life like Lazarus. But I expected that something good was going to come from something so terrible that it would be a miracle. There have been many miracles from that experience, from that time. But I'll share one with you that happened right here at this church. We were in the Charles Fillmore Chapel, and there was a guest speaker. I can't remember her name, Duke, but she had come from Baltimore. I know Christine remembers, and she was a reader or a psychic, and it was packed. And one of the few times that Phil would come to something after church. So he came to this program. It was like on a weekday night, and he was sitting in the back. And my job was just to introduce the speaker and tell everybody where the restrooms were, welcome everybody, tell them where the restrooms were and all that. She talked about how she hears things and how she gets word from the other side. She started asking questions about someone who's lost a child. And she described a teenager. Of course, I put my hand down. But obviously what she was describing fit to the T, this lady in the back of the room, her son. And she was just in tears. And then she said, and I see a younger child, or maybe a toddler, and I see a lot of water. And for those who don't know, my son drowned. And she said, he wants to tell you something. And I'm just all ears. She said, yesterday you were sitting in front of something, like you're sitting there and you're in a room, you're looking at something, and she says, there's a shelf. And his picture is on the shelf, and there's a bronze angel statue sitting next to the picture. He said, when you looked up, he was standing there. That's what she said. I got chills. And then this is the clincher. You've heard me talk about my dad's murder many times. 2 years after my son died, on Christmas Eve, 1976. So when my first grandchildren, the twins, were born, They were born at 10:13 and 10:16 on Christmas Eve, which was around the time of my dad's death, and I just knew Daddy had something to do with them coming. That was one of those restoration of the years the locusts had eaten. But what she said, let me know that miracles happen right in front of us. She said, "Are there twins?" And I'm like, "Yeah." She said, "He wants you to know he sent them. I'll restore to you the years the locusts have eaten." Expect a miracle. Expect a miracle. Recently, this week, as we were preparing for our 50th year class reunion, we had a meet and greet on Friday. And while I was there, someone came over and said, "Did you hear about Charlene?" There was only one Charlene that I know of in my class, and we happen to be cousins, same last name. Charlene Wayne, Sandra Wayne. Charlene lives in Bakersfield, California with her husband, Sam. And about 4 years ago, their daughter, Mimi, died in her sleep unexpectedly and left 2 little boys. So Charlene and Sam took over care for their grandsons. Charlene had come to the reunion from California on Tuesday. And she brought her 9-year-old grandson and her son, her grown son. They came together. Her husband and the older grandson were back in California. And it was all over the news on Wednesday that a little boy ran out in the street and was run over by a car on 23rd Street. That was Charlene's 9-year-old grandson. Now, immediately when I got the word, I left the meet and greet, and I didn't know Charlene was in town, so I called her and I went over to where she was. And we talked, and the one thing that kept coming through my mind is, "I'll restore to you the years the locusts have eaten." And I know that there's going to be a miracle. That Charlene and Sam are going to experience a miracle. That nothing's ever done. It's not over. So I want you to think about that this morning as we move into meditation. What miracle are you expecting in your life? You see, my even being here on this platform is nothing short of a miracle. All of us here, we're miracles. Jerome's singing, his voice, a miracle. Robert's playing, a miracle. Duke being senior minister of this church for almost 30 years, a miracle. Our staff performing miracles. Did you see when the lights went out and they came back up? That was a miracle. That was a miracle. So we may not notice. We may be too preoccupied, too self-absorbed, too rushed, or too busy. But pay attention, because there are miracles happening every single day. Expect it. I will restore to you the years the locust have eaten. Let's take that into meditation.